Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Talk Music Talk with Boice. This is Boice, and this is my podcast you are checking out. If this happens to be your very first time, Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people connected to music from different genres and different backgrounds, both established and emerging singers, singer-songwriters, music therapists, music journalists. And on this first episode of 2021, Happy New Year to you. I had the pleasure of speaking to one of my favorite past guests. He is returning, the incredible James Tillman. He was previously on episode 114, and plus we did an Instagram live conversation last year. We recorded this shortly after Thanksgiving. It is a wonderful, lengthy conversation. What did we talk about? We discussed his very busy 2020, which was filled with multiple releases. We talked about the advantages of self-releasing his music. We discussed his inspirations and influences, which include his family. We talked about his collaboration process, plus using social media in a way that fits him. Also, James talks about finding the good in 2020 and lessons he learned during the pandemic. He also talks about upcoming projects and so much more. After the conversation, you're going to hear one of my favorite songs from his album 2020's Modern Desires. It is called Ways. Right after the conversation, here it is. Without further ado, my conversation with James Tillman. Enjoy.
What's up, boys?
How you doing?
Woo! I'm good. Since the last time we talked, what was that? Beginning of the quarantine?
Was it the beginning? Was it? It was early on.
I think it was. It was earlier in it, but
okay.
Oh man, good to see you.
You too. But was it like a flip flop from between then and now? Or?
I don't know if it's a flip flop or it's more just like we're in
more flop, more flop than flip.
It's still the year is a flop, but we flipped it. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yes, I like the sound of that. I always forget, where are you? You in New York or Philly or DC?
You keep catching me when I'm back home with the family. So
okay,
I'm back in Maryland right now for the holidays.
Okay, so everything I just said was wrong, basically.
Huh?
All the places I said was wrong at this point.
You was close. I mean, it makes sense that you was acting in those places, though.
Okay, but so East Coast. You're on the East Coast.
I'm on the East Coast, just chilling, kind of like came back home for the holiday.
Okay, good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Good. How was Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was good. Mm-hmm. I think I just have been really embracing the pause and the chill out, you know. Mm-hmm. So since Thanksgiving was going into like a long weekend, I took off from technology. I just had a technology break through that long weekend, mm-hmm. and it was so helpful. Like I felt, it brought me to some place where I was like, okay, wow, like I really see my technology has a grip on me, but mm-hmm. also like I'm thankful that I have this time to kind of process.
Okay, that's good. You've been busy this year. Okay, because Silk Noise Reflex was 2016.
That was 2016, yeah.
And in 2020, you had the Arizona single, the mixtape, and then the new album,
and then the 2020 revved up. I don't even know what happened. Like it's crazy that mm-hmm. that all of that music was able to be released in this type of year.
Yeah.
And so I guess I keep, now everybody's getting the Spotify rap things. And I was like, oh, damn, I'm hitting about 3 things this year, which is like crazy for me, it seems like it. But I definitely realized with everything kind of being as it is, I'm really grateful to have autonomy to release my music. Mm-hmm. And not have to be at the whim of some corporate entity or somebody that's oh, this whole year is canceled for you. You don't put anything out, you know? So, and I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of reading and kind of thinking about, I guess what this period has really taught me is the importance and the value of community. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I'm really grateful to have, fans and people that I can connect with and share the music, and that it showed me how important it is to kind of build these structures, or how over these years that is what I've been building, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't until this happened where I was like, oh, I am really like, I've been looking at these things the wrong way. You know, I've been kind of like trying to, for whatever reason, associate and think with this kind of like that type of idea of like, oh, you know, you want to function like these labels are, or you want to have like these timetables and things like that you want to kind of like, you know, move your practice to be more in line with, when in actuality, they don't even know what they're doing. You know? So I realized, like, why am I over here? I have the tools and everything I need to connect with these people, these wonderful people who, you know, music has brought to my life. And I'm over here talking about, oh no, I can't release that right now. It's like, no, you can, you know? So this has been like a really big breakthrough, I guess, in that way of thinking, and just how we look at, like, you know, the new role of musicians in light of all of this new media that we have, you know, that our work is kind of mediated through, and how, you know, there is currency in the connection and the intimacy you have with those people, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I think I also felt kind of like weird about it early on, because, you know, for me, I'm used to, or I guess I grew up with the idea of an artist where it's like they put out music, they do some videos, they go on tour, but I don't know what their house looks like. I don't know. You know, they're not talking to me on that level. But we're in a new territory now where there's really value in the vulnerability you share, or, you know, we're just so like basically, I don't know. I don't want to go too far off, but I feel like, you know, social media has just shown me that, like, capitalism has kind of co-opted what used to be these very interior and very intimate spaces that we could foster with people. And it's like it's like, this is actually like the current way you are supposed to do things, you know? And that is a switch that, for an artist who is, you know, like me, I'm very much a musician first, you know? Like, I didn't go to school and study graphic design and do all these things where I was just, oh, I'm ready for this pivot. And that's hard, you know, because I've seen that through this quarantine really affect and, you know, just trip a few people up, where it's like, oh, I have to be able to connect in this way, but maybe I'm confident in my music, but I'm not confident in, like, how to do a dope carousel post that's going to show me doing something in my day. But, you know, that's like a new skill that you kind of have to learn too. And so, you know, I think I went through all the phases of being, like, kind of upset at that, you know, because, you know, I feel like what doesn't get talked about enough is, like, musicians are really supreme entrepreneurs, you know, like we are kind of on a front line of, like, our, you know, especially me coming from jazz, it's like we already work in, like, the gig economy, which is already trying to circumvent, you know, that more corporate structure where it's like, oh, I can take care of myself and keep my body and my soul intact, and, like, my music, you know, is going to continue to be made because I'm kind of, you know, scaling and going around this, like, more system that could thwart that or kill that creativity, you know? And so we're always in this kind of flux that can be crazy, you know, but it does take a lot of innovation and, like, intuitiveness that you have to kind of move with. And I know that, like, you know, from conversation I had at the beginning of the quarantine, like, a lot of my creative friends, we were talking about not wanting to burn out now that we feel like, oh, we have to create content or we have to be this active. Like, I don't want to burn out. I don't want to do something that's whack, and then also, like, you know, look like I'm trying too hard to connect. And it's like, oh, let me just, like, take a step back, take a pause, and understand that, like, we're all people here. And so that really kind of has helped me. So I've been really focusing my time on, you know, taking a little bit more time to be like, okay, if I'm going to make this mailing list, like, what do I want to share with people? What, you know, is something that is valuable. And I think it is finding those moments, however, and that's up to each artist to set that boundary, but however you feel like you can share a more human element is going to translate now. And so 2020 in a nutshell has just been about pushing through that and getting a little bit more closer to your community, I guess. Okay. For me.
So I wonder how it is for the artist who still wants to maintain some distance from the public and not have to share everything, but still promote yourself, right?
Yeah.
And let people know that you have a new album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because musicians were some of the I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and that's the thing, I don't like that. All of these, that this is a reality. It's more of just being like, I took it from like, I enjoy being able to do what I do, and I see that this is now a part of that. But I'm not the best at it. It's not like I don't have 1,000 posts on Instagram or see all of these different things. It's like, dang, James is doing videos. It's like, so I don't know. I do feel like it's not fair, because it, like I said, that's why I'm saying it's like, as artists, it already takes so much, effort and also resources to make great music. And if you have to divide and like splinter that, it puts the wrong message, I think. I think we the reality is we have all of these like tech companies and corporations starting to influence the process of actually making art, and now Spotify is trying to pilot stories, and it's like, that's not what this is for, and so that's why I said, okay, the best thing I can do is like, because also, who's to say next year Instagram doesn't like bite the dust? You know? It's like your community and how you can connect with them outside of these other veins is important. Maybe that doesn't mean you have to do it all the time, but maybe that's like an email blast. It's like, hey y'all, let me tell you how I'm really doing. Like, this has just been a lot. I want to connect with y'all, but I hate, the way that it's making me do that. Let's foster a space here, or let's like, strike something up here. And then, and so I think it's, that's just me trying to,
I get it. Cause I don't get the whole thing that you have to know everything that your favorite artist is doing. I mean, I don't care what Mick Jagger's doing right now.
Right. Why does he have that pressure? We don't need to know.
Yeah, and he's totally not online, right? And it's like, now there's this new thing where people feel like, well, if I love what you're doing, I got to know what everything you're doing every minute and day. And then there's this pressure on the artist where it's like, my art isn't enough. Now I have to, be a promotional person too. Be my own publicist.
And that's not it, Like, again, like, that's why I was like, wow, it's like, I'm grateful to have a team. And again, that's why I was like, for me, it's like, okay, I'm grateful. I can see again where my community holds me up because I have people and know people that can help me with these things. But that's not, it's not like, oh, James, now you need to like, you don't know how to design. You don't know how to work in, I don't know. You don't know how to edit videos. Like what? Like, you don't know how to supremely edit videos. Like, come on. Like, I want to see like, but it can feel like that. And, so,
no, you're not alone. You're not alone.
I don't know. I think a lot about that. And it's something that like, as we go into December, it looks like it's just revving up, because it's like, we can't tour, or you're starting to see kind of this like similar structure of like, people who get to do paid virtual performances. Everybody can't, and so then there's this pressure there, or it's like, the live performance has become this crazy art thing where it's like some people have extreme resources behind what they do, and then other artists are like, oh my gosh, like,
get my iPhone,
is that what they want, and so it's I don't know. I just think that like, it's like important. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the solution is like some some greater conglomerate of like artists coming together to kind of like do their own thing. But yeah, I don't even have the answer.
Yeah. Had you considered maybe not releasing music during this time? Because at the beginning we had no idea how long this was going to last.
Yes. Yeah. So my whole thing was like, I mean, end of 2019, I was dropping the singles for this album.
Yeah. And I was seeing you perform them. I had seen you perform some of these songs.
Yes. Yeah. And so the whole idea was like, okay, like March, that was like, okay, I'm going to put this new record out. It's great. I'm really grateful to have, had some semblance of an actual marketing plan and direction leading up to that. And then quarantine happened and I was on tour, like I was playing a show at True or False Fest in Missouri. And that was the first time that we started to get tipped off that like something was amiss because they were sending South by Southwest movies and things that were supposed to premiere there, trying to squeeze them into True or False because it was like one of the last festival things still going on. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. And literally the last day they were like, yeah, South by is canceled and the pandemic, it's just becoming an actual global issue. And so, I spoke with some people that I'm working with and it was like, okay, like we definitely need to push it back, because I was working on vinyl and all these things. And I was like, I don't know if I can't tour, which is like my bread and butter, then how am I going to actually promote this project? And so, the idea was like, oh, we're pushing it back to the fall. That's where we first were like, and then when shit got way too crazy around May, I think, or April, I guess. Like for me, it was like Bill Withers passed. And then it was like, oh, the world is actually really crazy right now.
Yeah.
And it might not. And then I had a thought. I was like, it might not ever not be crazy for a long time. So what do you do?
Never release music, right? Yeah.
Right. And I was like, okay. And so that's when I was like, well, again, I come back to community because I was like, okay, well, I've been listening to these tracks. They're unreleased. Some of them are unreleased and some of them are, including Bill Withers and Marvin Gaye and other people. I had a playlist that I was listening to, kind of like my go-tos. And I was like, well, maybe it would be cool to share some of these just as an interim, because I don't know what else to do. I can't, like, shows have been canceled. I don't even know, what's going to happen. Like, maybe let's try that. And it was cool. I think it actually like humanized some things and made it feel like we're all kind of going through this and we all are kind of figuring it out. But, that's where I was like, wow, I really, I got a lot of responses there where people were just like, thank you. This is actually really dope, and it's also, it was also kind of, like I said, crazy for me because VM2, like all of those, like those songs weren't necessarily a project at first. And they were written, most of them were written before that EP, before the pandemic and all of that. But to have some of the lyrics and things kind of like match the times was really like halting for me. Like that kind of, I've never had an experience as an artist like that before. And so it also made me understand that like timing is not it's not up to me, and it also is just like, but release the music, release it, like share it. And it could be something bigger than you that's actually going on. So yeah, it was a really odd time, but I still, at that point when I released VM2 was like, okay, maybe do I break my album up into EPs? Do I just release the rest of the singles? Because now it's just, the singles that I put out with, and I put out a video for Lose Control, they don't even feel, how am I going to connect them? How do I even bring that back together? Everything just feels messy and not related, And so it was kind of crazy. But from that process, then in all of this hysteria and this craziness going on, I forgot because we were still at the top of the year. We had talked about releasing Arizona with my friend Marco from Darker Than Wax. And a Singapore-based label. And so we still kind of had that on peripheral, but we hadn't locked in a date. And then right when I was like maybe, I don't know, like 2 weeks before, I was like, okay, I'm going to release GM2. And I knew I was kind of moving in that direction. He was like, okay, we're just going to release Arizona.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is really messy now, because now Arizona is not on the album and it's going to be on this vinyl and it's not on VN2. And now like, oh no, like, it's just going to even, what is it going to be like? But again, I remember feeling really grateful at that point, being like, wow, it's really nice to, you know, I think I kind of have been hard on myself in the past about just being independent and really trying to like make strides and like ascend in this crazy industry. But also at that point, I was like, yo, I'm really grateful that I had built an independent career and I can release this music, you know,
whenever you want.
It's great. That's a really big blessing. And so I was like, it's going to be fine. You know, it actually, maybe this is like a nice rhythm and we'll see how this goes. Cause I'm like hermit, work on album, put it out, back hermit, and then something comes out years later. But it was nice to switch that up and be like, okay, wow, there's more frequency with music coming out, but it also was cool because these are each different projects, you know, like it was cool where I was like, okay, it is nice that Arizona is like a single. And then you have this project that it's based around this personal story. And then we have the Modern Desires, which I was like already working on to kind of like its own thing too. And so that was like very informative for me as an artist, because I don't think I've been in a position like that before. But yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, and then Arizona ended up being really like, people like, you know, it kind of like just continued this flow of music being out, and people were like, wow, like this is also great. Thank you.
After 4 years, look what you do. Right?
Also, on record, I will say I'm not trying to wait that long to put out something again, because I do, like, in hindsight, I was like, wow, the world has really changed. And it's kind of, you know, I want to be more like intuitive and just like, okay, like not be like, again, that was me being like, I have to wait. Everything has to be perfect. And I have to treat myself like this cold label that I'm like, wait, it's not ready. Wait, you know? And
so with Modern Desires, are you a different person releasing Modern Desires than the person who made it?
100%. Yeah.
Does that feel weird releasing something that it's a different version of you?
I mean, yes and no. So it is Modern Desires is crazy because like it to me also, like, I ended up, you know, this year was rough. I ended up going through a breakup and having these other things happen. Yeah. And so when I wrote the record versus when it was like recorded and ready, I was in a whole different place, you know. I was like still in my relationship, and it was like, it was different. And so even me having that switch up, it was like, whoa, like, why does this feel like a breakup album? But it's not a breakup album. But also, wow, I have changed, you know? So it did. I definitely felt that. And I think that was just going to happen anyway with the way that the year went and how it, you know, the timing. But, you know, it's nice. What I will say is like, because when I put out Silk Noise, for example, or when I put out every project I did before, you have this phase where you're like too close to the music, I guess. Like I've listened to it. I know the things that I feel like, ooh, I wanted to do this, but I did that. Or like my analytical brain is like, okay, this is not what you're trying to do. And so whenever I hear that point in the song, I'm like, yep, that's that thing. Other people might not recognize it, but I have that. And it can be pretty bad. And so what's interesting with Modern Desires is since there was this distance that kind of just happened, or life kind of changed so dramatically in that time, that it speeded up that process. So then it was like hearing things for the first time again. Okay. Where it was like hearing things newly and being like, oh, wow, like I really again, just like feeling of gratitude. Like, I'm really glad that I was able to complete these, all the stuff that I went through, all of how the sheer amount of effort it takes to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it. And I'm really just thinking and listening in that way now, you know? So being like, oh, wow, like, not necessarily, I mean, there's still some things where I'm like, but it wasn't the same. I think I had to look at things a little bit differently.
Okay.
And it was a lot more, it felt new. It felt like a newer listen. Like when it all came out, and then even hearing the singles finally in the context of the album out had a different effect on me too.
Okay. Because you knew what it sounded like before we ever heard the singles.
I did. But I also was in that really critical mindset of like, okay, like this is, you know, it's like I can't sometimes remove myself from that, you know, or that's why I have to set deadlines, because I have to just be like, all right, it's done. Mm-hmm. You can't tinkle with it anymore, though you'd like to. Then you might be working on it for 5 more years, but not having that be the main way that I'm functioning, or change that was like really helpful.
When you're tinkering, is your tinkering on sound design? Is it on lyrics? Doing more and more vocal takes? Like, what do you spend a lot of your tinkering?
Not vocal, like it's not vocal takes. Mm-hmm. I think for me, I'm really a really big stickler for editing. Mm-hmm. And so always being like, okay, like this is A prime, this is like B prime, and I have all these different mixes, or I have, let's drop the bass out here, or let's like put strings here, or let's take them away. And so in that process, I can get lost, you know, like with recording, I'm really grateful because like when I went to Brazil and recorded the first time, we basically got into a rhythm of like, okay, you're just going to do 3 takes of each song each day. And maybe you don't feel like you're accomplishing anything, but by the end of the week, you have 12 different versions.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't get it there, maybe it's not going to happen, you know? But I think, you know, Silk Noise was like a really big lesson for me in terms of like working and editing. And so I really loved that and really got lost in that. And so I think when I say like I could continue tinkering, it's more of like those things, because I'm also, you know, the way that I work, it's like I do what I do, and then it's like I send it to my mix engineer, and then it gets mastered. And so with the mix engineer, we'll go back and forth, but it's already again like a deadline of like, okay, we're going to do this. We have some revisions, but there's going to be an end point to it. Yeah. And so, it's kind of that leading up to it where I could just be like, ooh, let's try this, let's do that. But yeah.
And it's especially important having deadlines as an independent artist, or you may never 100%. Get anything done. Right?
Oh my goodness. If there wasn't deadlines, I don't know what.
Did you go into this album, because it feels different than Silk Noise Reflect, like there's more textures, different things going on with your voice. Like how much is that organic or consciously, okay, I don't want this to be like the previous album?
I think it's organic. I mean, I don't ever like drastically go in and be like, or at least to this point, I haven't been like, everything is out of the window. Like I'm not making the same record. I think it's literally growth, because for me, you know, I mean, I have the staples of people I listen to as inspirations, but there were other influences. I was like listening to a lot more like Sade, like Phil Collins, like these very, like what I consider like these torch songs that are just like very powerful and also, you know, sparse and also very like, every texture matters. And so it's not necessarily, you know, with Silk Noise, I was very interested in like the ideas of repetition and the ideas of like how that can create something new. And in this one, I was more, you know, kind of just wanting to emote and make these songs as powerful and focused as they could be.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't set out to like have it not be what Silk Noise was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. I do think like there's elements that have, that are there, that were there in the last projects. But yeah, I don't know. I think it just, this one, I feel like I was a little bit more open in terms of like working with different producers. I worked with Richie Marrero, who's like amazing. And he kind of just like imparted knowledge, because he's from the 70s and like had bands and recorded with Angela Bofill, Hector Lavoe, and these amazing, musicians. And they did things that's very different, a particular way, So he's like, yo, like the congas have to hit like this. If the beat is flipped, then that's whack and it doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
So having kind of those influences, I think also focused the record, like I remember having like when we recorded Wake Up, he really just was like, okay, like these other elements, these percussive elements are like the spirit of the song.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, so you don't want to do too much, but you want each thing to have like a purpose, and it's like, that was something that was like, that really stuck with me from those sessions. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you can hear that there's like a more of a, there's things going on, but it's like everything is purposeful.
Okay.
And so that was more of like, maybe that was like the overarching force, but yeah, I don't know if that answered.
No. So what were you, after the songs were written, it's time to go studio, what were you looking for in collaborator? Or how did you know it would be the right collaborators?
Collaborators
and musicians.
I mean, it was things that had kind of built organically, So like Matthew Rivera, we worked together on Lose Control. That is something that like he sent me like the initial bones of that back in, I don't know, 2015, and so it just finally felt like, like this is the project where we can like work together.
Yeah.
And then Gabriel Pearson, who did Nightfire, the opening track, we worked on that. We are from the same area, and so it was like, I remember when he was just like, trying to get up to New York and like intern at these studios and cut his teeth engineering. And then, he was in New York finally. I was there and it was like, oh my gosh, like let's work. And these are like moments now that we can do that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't think everything kind of was organic in that way.
Okay. So with this album that's done, and the songs were finished a while ago, are you working on new stuff now, or is it more like, well, I got to focus on this album before I can move on?
There's always stuff in the mix. Mm-hmm. I am working. I mean, again, this year and going into next year is already crazy too, just in terms of like timing. But for me personally, it's like, I'm not done fully with Modern Desires. Like there are visuals and other things that are in the works that I want to also continue to roll out. But what's really interesting for me is that like there is a body of like music that that VM2, that Modern Desires, and like the things that are going to come next are all kind of from.
Yeah.
And so it feels really, I feel like I'm in an era of wanting to kind of like paint that narrative and like tell more of that and fully flesh that out. And so, I'm really interested because, I'm planning to release like a single in February that comes from like, again, this body of music, but I wonder if people are going to think it's like drastically different or if I can never really account for that. But yeah, I'm working in that, but I also have been taking time to like, I've been working on like, just like a vocal and guitar project that kind of, I don't know, I don't have a date of when that released, but yeah, I think I am working on new things. I'm really like grateful that I do have, music that I am wanting to release and will release already kind of ready. Yeah. And so that's like a really, great feeling to kind of have like an archive and like a vault of like things that are done, and that I can share, and that I want to, and that can help tell this story. So yeah, I'm kind of oscillating between those two worlds at the moment.
What do you see as the story for these 2020 songs?
Whew, 2020. I mean, so the whole, I guess, writing session that the songs come from, I call it like my Magic City era. And so Magic City for me is, I think some people know it as a strip club, but for me, it's like Magic City is Gary, Indiana, which is where my family is from. And it's really writing songs that are based on sonic influences. So asking my parents what they used to listen to, being familiar with the radio stations, like, you know, WGCI, which is one that plays there. And they'll have these really soulful elements, you know, and also like, you know, the Jacksons live there, and Evelyn Champagne King is from there. And, you know, there's a history there. And I think it was, you know, I wanted to pay homage to that, but also pay homage to my family, you know, and kind of like their movements and things. And so, you know, there's an element of persona that is kind of bringing life to those things, whilst also looking at, you know, like Marvin Gaye and everything that Motown was doing, which is also coming from that like Midwest area, and thinking about the presentation and like wanting to me, you know, continue and share that legacy of kind of like how it has like been evolved, like how it has evolved and progressed into like where we are now. And so I think part of me, there's like, I've shot a lot of Super 8 footage, like in Gary and some other things like that. And so I know that there's like some visuals and things like that I want to put out, but I see all of these as kind of like building that persona, you know, of like this quintessential modern day soul man, you know, who knows where he's coming from, but is also a complete child of the 90s and the 2000s. And so there's that idea, but in the visual aesthetics, like, you know, if I was to tour and be able to do that, it would be wanting to bring more of that to life, you know, like, like the Lose Control video, or like, you know, other things that have yet to really have been able to share. But I think it's just more of kind of like, that feels like something, an element of like personally to me, that's something I want to bring forth. I think culturally it's really important to shout out that, you know, and like, I think we're in this time where, you know, I don't know. I just think you can't really like spring forward without really knowing where you're coming from. That's like a big thing for me. And so, you know, I also have a niece who I'm like, I want her to know, like, is she going to know who these people are? Or is she just going to be like, oh, that's alternative R&B? I don't know. Like, it's just a thing, you know? And so part of me is always thinking about that. It's like, you know, you want to, you know, share and like show that lineage. You know, you can be present and you're going to be present, but there's something really special about kind of like holding on to those certain elements and knowing where they come from.
Yeah. You
know, as a Black person.
Yeah. Because, you know, there's a lot of music out there. The influences go only like 2-3 years deep. So,
yeah. I mean, you can't really, nobody can see that. The interview was like, And I think that's, you know, what we run the risk of, again, going back to like this whole, the way that media has like started to, one, shape our listening experience, but literally there does feel like a divide growing between like the reach back. It's like, okay, like, you know, like, I mean, I get so amazed where it's like, you know, I can hear a song and be like, oh, I know that sample, or I know that. And other people are like, what? And it's like, how do where do you think R&B came from? Or like, where do you think these things are coming from? You know, it's like, you know, I mean, I feel like now it's like, if people go back to like the Soulquarians, then they're like, oh, you're deep, and you know, and it's like, there's such a breath of music that is still to this day being sampled or is finding its way there. But if you don't really if people aren't aware of that, then it's just gonna like fade.
Yeah,
and that's, I don't know, and I think we're also in an era where like it's the R&B era, so R&B is becoming like, or the sounds and the textures and things are becoming pop, and like they're influencing what we consider pop music now. Hip hop is also, it's getting looped into that, the pop sphere, which is cool because, out of respect, like that music deserves that, and I want it to reach the highest realms, and be considered this like, in American culture, it's like, this is great and this is like defining and pushing the sound forward, but it's cutting it off from its, roots. And I think that's what is always so weird, I'm so aware of. It's like, wow, like we can't forget about these things, but we also like, it's important to just have that continue to be a part of the conversation, knowing where these things kind of like evolve from,
Yeah. What do you think it's about? Because, I mean, it's not like it's not easily accessible. I mean, if you want to know the history of music, I mean, it's free on YouTube, or, it's so easy for people to find out this history, but there's not necessarily, I guess, a desire, or it's ignorance. What do you think that's about?
It's really interesting. I know, like, I have friends that, some of it is just, they're not aware, and I find that to be kind of crazy. Like, part of it for me, I always forget, like, everybody is not a music head.
Yeah.
People can listen to music, but they don't necessarily inquire and want to like dig beyond that. And I can't be mad at them for that. It's just like, I'm, maybe I'm different in that way. It's like, I want to know, I'm going to look at the footnotes. I'm going to look at the credits. I'm going to see what's going on here. But we also are in a society where you don't see credits, where you don't really see connections. Like, I think it also is like the algorithms, like they are not people. And so, I know that like times where I've learned a lot from music has been people putting me on, it's been like, so I don't know. There's like an element of like a person kind of sharing, and like, then there's this knowledge. And then that was like a gateway to me being like, oh, let me go and dig and see stuff. But if you don't know to do that, then you kind of just be like, this is dope. This is really cool. Not even knowing that it's sampled, not even knowing that it's a jazz riff or interpolation or something, And so, I don't know. I think it has a lot to do with just like, we're in this information technology age where we're distracted. And if the lines aren't drawn to show us where to go, we might just not go
stop right there.
We might stop. And so, that's why, like, I hope with like Musella Creative, which is like my creative company that I used to put all my music, but I'm also working on like, like some playlists or like some mixes that kind of like blend and blur all of these musics together, where it's like you can hear an Erykah Badu track and then it segues into Mahalia Jackson, because you need to know who Mahalia Jackson is too. And then we could even throw in, Travis Scott, because like you can hear how these things kind of like influence are from the same cloth, so to speak. But if there isn't any, the thing I realized, like, if there isn't anyone doing that, then you can't expect people to know, And I think that was like an assumption I initially had as a musician, where I'm just like, how do you not even know to do this? And then, I think for me, a real big thing in my life has been like having a niece who is coming up in this generation that's always had technology, that's always been on the internet, that's always been on Twitter and all these things. And I see the gaps. It's like, oh, like you are super tech savvy, but like you don't know that there's this whole other world that's even back there, because how could you know? Like, and so it's like, okay, like there has to be something that bridges that, you know? And I think part of that is like meeting people kind of where they are, you know, it's like a podcast, a playlist in my, you know, or a mix that I put up in my mailing list. And then I share the songs because I don't know, you know, I was an assumption like, oh, everybody in here knows music, but
and they don't.
And so
purely like it for listening, and that's it.
They love to listen to good music, but like,
and it kind of just stops there.
Yeah, and that's great. That's a great thing. It's like, you know, I don't know. I can't compare it to myself because, like, again, I'm gonna like, you show me a great movie, I'm gonna be like, hey, let me see the credits. Like, who did this? What,
see, that's me, dude. Like, I got into Joni Mitchell because I read a Prince article and it's like, okay, I owe that to Prince because if I love Prince, I gotta love what Prince loves.
Right. But see, I don't know. Maybe, and that's the thing. Maybe it's like there's just a difference now. I don't know if that's like we are just fortunate to have that kind of curiosity. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to do other than like, okay, now you have to share those things. And now, you know, maybe everybody didn't see that article and maybe some people won't, and they don't even know the great, you know, track by Joni Mitchell, you know, like for me, with a friend of mine, who I'm working with, like I, you know, grew up playing clarinet and like love classical music and have listened to it and like, and can really nerd out on that. And so I had people over and I had like this classical playlist that I made and was like, oh, I love this. Great. And we're like, what is that? Like, what are you listening to? And I immediately was like, I don't know if you're going to like this. It's classical. And they were like, I don't even know how to dig into classical. So if you could share that playlist, that would be dope. And they were like, thank you. Like, this is great. You know, like now I like that track by Brahms, like whatever. It's dope. And so little things like that keep happening where it's like, okay, like, you know, the idea of like paying some of that forward and not always like assuming you know where people are is like very important nowadays. You know, we're getting so much information thrown at us that like, if you want someone to know something, you have to show them it. Yeah. And you saying that about classical makes me think that, you know, that's one of the music genres that people are often intimidated by, like along with jazz. And it's like, well, okay, it's so vast. I don't even know where to start, so I'm not going to start. So you actually do need someone like to kind of lead you to it and like, okay, start here. Or, you know, because I found out what would happen with me is like, I had people like that who were like, oh, I'm listening to jazz now. I finally got into it. And then it's like the things they're listening to, I'm like, no, step away. And so then you get this animosity where you're like, what? That's not. And it's like, oh, well, maybe if I actually shared some music with you, then we would be on a different page. Yeah. Like wait, it's like you can't like Careless Whisper played by a saxophone is not gonna do it for you. Like, let me help you out. Let me help you. When we talked, was on the IG interview, I forgot to ask you about this. Like, you had a song that was synced on Dear White People. Yes. Casual Encounters, is that right? Casual Encounters, yeah. Yeah. Did that have any impact on your career, or is it just a nice thing? For sure. A nice thing that happens. Yeah. That's another, just always expressing gratitude. Like, thank you to Morgan Rhodes and, you know, the folks at, I don't know what studio that was, but it made it, you know, like, yeah. But yeah, I think it just, the impact to this day, I think it still has an impact, you know, like I'm still getting people that are just finding that song and being like, wow, this is really cool. You know, that was last year, right? Was that last year? Oh man, that was that? That was 2018. Okay. Actually. Yeah. Time is really moving, but through the wonders of Netflix, people still discover it. Right. Through the one, you know, when we're binging and we're inside, let's go and look back at all the seasons of Dear White People. You know? But no, I think that really, that allowed me to continue to be making music and to do things like that really did help, you know? And I think that, those things can't be underestimated. You know, the amount of reach and the amount of exposure that something like that can have on a career. You know, I definitely know James Tillman pre that placement and Tillman post are different. And so, you know, I by no means like, you know, at this point where it's like, oh, I'm where I want to be and I'm but it pushed me in that direction and I'm grateful for that. And so I do think that it also opened the door to more licensing and things like that. You know, like I think one of the songs was in Queen Sugar and
Okay, great.
You know, by other supervisors. And there's this like people they're like, send me your music now. Like, let's, you know, keep me posted on what you're doing. So
that's wonderful, James.
I'm very grateful for that.
And speaking of gratitude, I was interviewing somebody earlier today, and I asked them a question. So I got to set it up. So this Monday was my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you. And my good friend Michael, who he always takes me out for dinner on my birthday, but this year he was nervous about sitting in a restaurant. So, which I understand, and I'm like, okay. I'm not going to stay at home. So I'm going to go and take myself out to dinner. I love me, right?
Very New York of you.
So I went, and nobody was in there, so it would have been perfectly safe for us to be there. It was like me and the staff, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, what am I? My birthday's at the end of the year, which is a perfect time to look back and reflect on this year. And instead of being like, oh, 2020 was awful, I'm like, oh, well, you got to working on your music, which you have been saying you were going to do for years. And, you know, that was wonderful. And you did all these extra podcasts that you wouldn't have done otherwise. So I asked you, looking back on 2020 as we record this, you know, the beginning of December, are you able to look back and be like, okay, I'm glad this happened, and it only happened probably because of lockdown and quarantine?
Yeah. There were definitely some moments like that. I think one, putting an album out during this time gave me a understanding of things that I could not have had if it wasn't for this year, you know. Also, in hindsight, I'm really grateful for the time I got to spend with my family. You know, like being home, it was very, it made time feel different, you know, where I was like, wow, we're growing and getting older, and I've literally been gone for years, and I see that. And so having that perspective was great. But yeah, I think that like, it's weird. It's a weird vibe because it's like, but in no means do I like and just want to embrace this as like the new normal, you know, like that whole thing. But it really there were some real blessings with this year that it kind of imparted. If you were paying attention and you were like, you know, looking for ways to grow and to kind of like figure it out, I think you could have come to some new places in yourself that you probably wouldn't have. Because then looking back to it now, if you look at stuff that was going on like into 2019, it kind of was, you're kind of like, oh, we were wilding. Like we were actually like messy. Like people were just talking as though everything is promised and, you know, everything is endless. It kind of was like, I don't know, like maybe the way that the 20s were roaring. I feel like the aughts were like, we were doing a lot. So I kind of having that perspective now, it's like, wow, I am looking back and I'm grateful. And for me, I also like took time to kind of like, there's some skills that I want to brush up on. And so like drawing and really like strongly getting back into like poetry. And so I just have been I fell in love with reading again. And so I got like mad, just like right here, books on books. And I'm just like enjoying kind of letting myself go and just like be in those modes, so to speak, where I used to always be like, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. I got to go. Like, you know, everything's busy and you know, so I think, I really do feel, I don't think we're going to have, I don't know how long this is going to go on, obviously, but I do think once it's over, I don't know when we'll have this time with ourselves again. You know, maybe we'll have fostered it into like structures that we then continue to live with, but it's a really special time in that regard.
Yeah. And it was a great lesson in the whole thing. Like, you know, the more you resist something, resist what is, the more like trauma you create for yourself, instead of like, okay, what is this new way of thinking that I can go along with as this happens? And
yeah. Well, I think that was what was huge for me, is like I had to accept a lot of things. It's like, okay, life as I know it is ending, meaning that like situations that I was in or things that were going on have terminated. Yeah. And so I can't act like that's not happening. And I also can't, you know, crouch in, just lay in the fetal position forever. So I have to figure out what matters to me, what things sustain me, what things like help me, and face that. And also I got to see my problems and the things that I in myself really needed to work on. And maybe I hadn't been, or I had been, you know, again, surface level, just scooting around things. It's like, oh, you know, this has been a thing for me. Yeah. And this is something that like has sapped me in other ways that now I should just deal with.
Oh, I love that. I just interviewed the co-author of Tina Turner's new book on Buddhism called Happiness Becomes You.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great book. It just came out on December 1st. So she talks about one of the principles in the Buddhism is that Nichiren Buddhism is that you're changing poison into medicine. And it's like that just came back to me over and over this year, how, you know, 2020 was an opportunity to change poison into medicine.
That's all 2020 was.
Yeah.
And now when you put it that way, it's like, thank you for the words. That's really it was alchemy. It's like, okay, this is terrible, but we're going to make it work.
Cool.
Wait, but you also said you were like working on music?
Yeah, so it's like I've been saying for years, because I released music before, but I bought a new MacBook Pro. This is 2 years ago, James. I bought in 2018 a new MacBook Pro. I bought a Ableton Push, and I took a few lessons, and then it didn't click, and then I didn't do anything for 2 years. And then during lockdown, it was just there, like sitting, and I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. So I went on lynda.com. There's an Ableton Live course, right?
Yes.
13-hour course.
Lynda's fire.
It's wonderful. And if you have a New York library card, it's free.
Oh.
Hot tip for people, right?
Ooh, let them know. Let the folks know.
Yeah. So I did a 13-hour Ableton Live course on there, which took it's so dense, it took me like 90 hours to do. And I'm like, I would have never had the chance to do 90 hours.
That's great, though.
In 2.5 months.
Right. No, but that's dope.
Yeah. That's so it's like dope. I've been doing that and learning piano. And I'm just getting ready for 2021 with the music.
Okay, so let me know when your album is dropping. Okay. Yes. I'm going to have to interview you. No, that's great.
Good.
That's what the year is. It's like, you know, you got time.
I totally believe it. So anything we leave out? You got the albums out now. People should totally check out Modern Desires and related stuff branching out from it in the future.
There are some things branching out.
Yes.
There is going to be I'm dropping a special like visual thing, probably around Christmas, so look out for that. There's going to be a track, It Was Love, that is dropping around February, coincidentally. But that is, again, I'm really excited for that single. What else? There may be some other sprinkle things top of the year. We'll see. But yeah, there will definitely be more things to come in a more frequent fashion coming from James Tillman.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, and I think things will branch out. Like again, I'm gonna be working on mixes and like, you know, they've been talking with some of my friends that I went to jazz school with about podcasts and things like that. So there'll be plenty more to come.
Okay,
it's just gonna, you know, it's gonna be a slow build, you know, because we have
wonderful.
Time.
Wonderful. Dude. Best place for people to keep up with all these things online with you.
So if you go to, where is it? I think in any of my bios, there's a link tree that has my website, a link to my mailing list. The mailing list I'm revving that up to be more active. So I would say definitely tune in there. And then if anything I'm starting to kind of let Twitter be more vocal for me. So I'll be kind of popping off there too.
Okay.
And then Instagram, I'm always there. So
okay, and I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay.
And people should know, just as a side note, with the whole mailing list, people really should focus on a mailing list because you never know what social media thing is going to fall by the wayside.
Oh, yeah. You can't assume that everybody's on social media and checking out your stuff and always gonna, that's, again, it's not always, we don't know. That's something that, like, you can't control, but, like, mailing lists have been around since the dawn of the internet. So
you can control that.
Maybe they know something. Maybe there's something there.
James, this is wonderful, man.
Yeah, always a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, Andrew, thank you for doing this.
I mean, also just thank you for, like, you really kind of, like, interview, the scene from New York and, like, really check in on us. So you are appreciated. And, like,
thank you.
Again, like, there's a community here, and it's also great to, like, have that be fostered. So thank you.
Sure. Anytime, man. Well, be well, James.
All right.
Be in touch.
Thank you, boys. You too. I mean, it's your birthday month, so also like enjoy. I mean, keep doing you.
I will, dude.
All right.
Take care, dude.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Like a battle when I'm trying to
from Modern Desires, that was Ways from James Tillman. I hope you enjoyed his music. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you would like more information on Talk Music Talk, head on over to talkmusictalk.com. More podcast information and to stream every single episode. You can also follow me on Instagram at thisisboice, and some special requests for you. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and so many other places. Just search for Talk Music Talk. And wherever you happen to listen, please leave a 5-star rating and or review to help expose TMT to brand new listeners. There is also a free app. You can download it free wherever you like to get your apps. Again, just search for Talk Music Talk. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, and there will be a next time, this one's for you, Liz.